You know the exact feeling. It is 11 at night, and you suddenly have the perfect plan to fix your life. You set the alarm for 5 a.m., you map out the work, you promise yourself that tomorrow is the day. But by 2 o'clock the next afternoon, that energy is completely gone, and you are right back exactly where you started. Most people look at that collapse and tell themselves a very specific story, that they lack grit. We are taught to look at our own inconsistency as a character flaw, a failure of personal discipline. The modern self-help industry feeds directly into this. It tells you the solution is to find more drive, read a quote, watch a hype video, and somehow manufacture a state of intense emotional readiness before you attempt a difficult task. Treating your inconsistency as a feelings problem leads to a predictable cycle of failure. If your system for doing hard things requires you to feel inspired first, you do not actually have a behavioral system. You have a volatile mood dressed up as a functioning method. Psychological research shows that willpower does not behave like a permanent personality trait. It behaves like a shrinking pool. This graphic illustrates how that cognitive pool functions throughout a normal day. Every minor temptation you resist, every small annoyance you suppress, and every tiny choice you make draws down your reserve. The second structural flaw is that emotional states are highly volatile. By the time you face the task you avoided all week, that pool is empty. You can have a perfect schedule mapped out, but unexpected grief, an argument with a coworker, or physical exhaustion will instantly fracture whatever capacity you had left. Any strategy that asks you to wait until you feel ready is broken by design. It relies on a resource that actively runs out, meaning your consistency will only ever be as strong as your worst emotional day. To see what an actual system looks like, we have to look outside the self-help space. During the Cold War, organizations with virtually limitless resources treated human behavior under extreme stress as an engineering problem. In a hostile interrogation room, waiting to feel inspired before protecting information is not a survivable strategy. The environment is designed to break human will, so operatives had to be trained to execute their objectives regardless of their internal state. Researchers who studied this era of training point to a heavy reliance on a concept called conditioned response under stress, training the nervous system to default to a predetermined action rather than an emotional reaction. They did not try to make an operative feel brave. Instead, they mechanically drilled highly specific physical and mental sequences until those actions became completely automatic. The underlying fear was still there. It simply stopped being relevant to the physical outcome. True discipline is never a feeling you summon. It is a rigid sequence you install. This timeline shows exactly where your action dies. It rarely dies in the middle of a hard task. It dies in the 30 seconds right before the task begins. That is the negotiation window, the internal back and forth where your brain aggressively searches for any logical excuse to delay. To bypass this, we use the first of 5 components adapted directly from intelligence protocols, the anchor sequence. This is a 90-second physical trigger, like taking 3 breaths and repeating a set phrase, that moves you into action before the brain has time to formulate an argument against it. The second component, controlled discomfort, translates resistance training into daily life. By deliberately choosing a small physical or mental friction, like sitting in total silence for 10 minutes, you train your mind to stop negotiating for an early exit. The third component is the isolation reset. Intelligence training noted that operatives who could not tolerate silence were the most vulnerable under pressure. This daily 10-minute block of zero input breaks the modern reflex of numbing silence with digital distraction. The fourth component, the commitment script, mirrors operational protocols. You decide on a rigid internal phrase in advance and deploy it the exact second you notice resistance, replacing improvised, unreliable thoughts with a predetermined response. Finally, the daily debrief mimics a standard operational log. Each night, you write down exactly what you did, actively ignoring how you felt about it. You are building an evidence-based relationship with your actions, rather than an emotional one. When layered together, these 5 mechanical components form a complete architectural system. It is designed to operate regardless of whether you feel energized, exhausted, or entirely unmotivated. The single most dangerous point of failure happens when people understand these rules, feel a rush of motivation, and try to implement all 5 components on day 1. This calendar illustrates the exact pacing you must use. On day 1, you build only the anchor sequence. Over the next 6 days, you mechanically layer the remaining components one by one, never all at once. When you inevitably miss a day, you treat it strictly as a neutral data point. Suppress the urge to criticize yourself, calmly bypass the error, and simply run the sequence at the very next opportunity. The purpose of this strict, slow rollout is to prove to your brain with undeniable evidence that the architecture holds. You are replacing chaotic effort with engineered inevitability. Movies have conditioned us to believe that discipline just looks like gritting your teeth in the pouring rain. The reality of effective discipline is much quieter. It is simple, highly repetitive, and intentionally boring. This is exactly where the daily debrief does its work. It strips away the distorted, negative narratives we tell ourselves when we are in a bad mood and replaces those stories with hard facts. Maintaining that factual log eventually proves something vital. You are showing up far more consistently than your emotional memory gives you credit for. After the first 7 days, a distinct shift occurs. The physical sequences stop feeling like a heavy system you have to force, and they start operating as an automatic reflex. The idea that you need to be motivated to do hard things is a myth. You will never need to wait to feel ready again, because small, mechanical repetition will always defeat large, occasional surges of emotion.